Hey, if you're looking to get your music up on all the platforms in one fell swoop, I highly recommend DistroKid. It's super simple to use, it's affordable, I've used it, and for our listeners, if you go to distrokid.com/VIP/talk guitars, you will get 30% off. That's distrokid.com/VIP/talk guitars. I hope you dig it. Hey everybody, it's Chris and Rick Talk Guitars, and we are going to talk about guitar players. You know, like a man's man or a woman's woman or a golfer's golfer or whatever. You know, there's that adage, and we thought it'd be cool to talk about a guitarist's guitarist. And I'm really curious to know, Chris, what your definition of that is, because I kind of have one in my mind, but I'd love to hear what yours is so I can rip it apart. Yeah, what's your definition of a guitarist's guitarist?
The definition, mine, has always been something like a guitar player who guitar players can appreciate more than anybody else. And it may be on the surface, they may not be technically, like a lot of people won't get that. You know, maybe your average listener will like, yeah, I don't know what's so special, but I'm not hearing anything. But somebody who's a student of the guitar that's played it for a while will sense these things and just, really appreciate where they come from, their approach and their tone and whatever it is. So, cool. Yeah, I mean, if you do a Google search for it, because I wanted to do that because the more I thought about this topic, the more I started to get confused by it. It's the one that came up first was Jeff Beck. Well, I agree. I mean, anybody. I mean, that's to me, though, it's more than a guitarist guitar. I think it's anybody who knows what a guitar is or music is can be impressed and think that's a good guitar player. Yeah. So, I mean, but I'm not going to argue with that. Like I said, everybody's different. But when you start thinking about this, and this is what I find interesting, it says a lot about you as a guitar player. And you start thinking about it, and it gives you directions that maybe like you can explore to even be a better guitar player. These things that you like in somebody that you see that nobody else might not notice that you like is like, I don't know, it's kind of just an interesting thing to think about.
Well, who's somebody on your list that you would consider a guitarist's guitarist?
Oh, I have so many. The one that I thought of almost immediately was Mike Campbell, because, and I'm sure there's a lot of guitar players who wouldn't agree with that. They just wouldn't get it. But I think a lot of guitar players, at least the ones that I know, like can appreciate that he can do something that a lot of people can't do. Yeah. And I've probably said, I don't know if I've said it before on the show, but I've said it, that he can work in the context of a brilliant Tom Petty pop song that's like super hooky, infectious, memorable. And he can put a guitar lick in there that you can walk away from the song humming, but still remember the song. So it's like that, the ability to do that and just to choose perfect, memorable parts that, you can whistle and things like that just makes it, to me, something that someone who's spent time trying to come up with parts, guitar parts and play parts, and, come up with memorable things can really have appreciation for how that's something that's not really easy to do. Yeah. And he does it consistently. You know what I mean? So he's probably the first one. But honestly, I was thinking about this too, is I'm just impressed by just about every guitar player I hear. Something, I find something that to be impressed by. Somebody like Bill Frisell, like to me, somebody that, I mean, he's just across the board a great guitar player, but he's someone, once you've been playing guitar for a while, studying guitar, and you start to feel like you're getting good, you just listen to what he does, and just it seems like effortless, and the things that he comes up with. I'm pretty sure that people don't really play guitar can appreciate that, but I think a guitarist probably a little extra, would probably be able to appreciate it. Yeah. That's two off the top of my head. How about you?
Well, it's cool because I thought a lot about this too, and I thought about what my definition is, and I agree with your definition, and then I would add I'd probably not add, you probably feel this way too, but it's also just kind of the way, kind of their personality and kind of the way they fit into the family of the greater community of guitar players, right? Like, or how they're seen by other guitar players, not just for their guitar playing, but just kind of for their love of the instrument or their love of playing music, right? Like I think of guys like Waddy Wachtel, for instance. Like he just seems like he loves guitar. He loves playing music. It's his life, literally. And there are other people like him, but to me, he came to mind because he just embodied this kind of joy. And hearing him talk about like when he was needed a guitar, and he practiced in the same practice place as Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and Steven Stills goes, yeah, go into our room and pick one out, and I'll sell it to you. And he picked out the Burst, and just kind of this, you know what I mean? So this kind of like familial attitude towards all of his peers and all of the people that are in music together. And so that's what I kind of see as other ingredients in guitarist definition or philosophy. And then I totally agree with the Frizzell thing. Another person that came to mind was David Lindley.
Oh, yeah.
I never really appreciated him when I was younger, but as I got older and listened to his stuff, and he played slide guitar and just weird. He also was into weird gear. That's another thing I think about
Right.
maybe a guitarist is somebody who really appreciates a gear that isn't like the norm, right? Like he loved all these weird lap steels and weird old harmonies and all this cool funky silver tones, all this cool gear, and he made it sound so cool. And he played with Jackson Browne and all these other cats, and so he came to my mind too when we
Yeah, that speaks to what you just talked about, like personality. His personality was the cheapo guitar, that kind of thing. But yeah, Running on Empty, the Jackson Browne record, is a really good example. And I used that when I had pedal steel in my band and I was like doing recording. I was kind of going for that feel. Another guitarist for me is Neil Young. And people will just go on, guitar players will go on about how he can't play the guitar and all this stuff, And it's like people like us who've been playing for 1,000 years and go, the way that he attacks that, the visceral way that he attacks that guitar and the melodies he comes up with and the way he puts them into those songs and wraps his voice around all that stuff, it's fucking brilliant. And I wish I could do that,
Yes.
It's not technical thing to me, it's not a technical, it's not like, sports get stuck into everything. And that's always problematic when you throw in the sports thing and it's like, this is better than this because it's more complicated, all that stuff. And with a guitarist for me anyways, none of that stuff. I mean, complicated doesn't matter at all. It's just something. And I like the element that you put in there because I hadn't thought about that. It's like the vibe, the essence, the musicality of the person. From thinking about this, I've kind of like changed my view on all these things. I can probably name like 1,000 guitarists for me anyways.
Yeah.
It's like Mark Ribot in the Tom Waits era, that kind of crazy guitar that he did, like on Rain Dogs. Then when I was only playing for a short while, I thought it blew my mind. And now, even after playing for many years, it still blows my mind that stuff he pulls out. So yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about. And I think it's kind of a useful tool for evaluating your own playing style. Maybe.
Exactly. And again, as we're talking about this, what I kept coming back to is not, because I guess the guitarist to me, that phrase kind of evokes to me more, not so much the sport or comparison stuff, more just appreciation. And as you were talking about that other guitar player, I think not in terms of like, oh, that person's underappreciated or something, but more like under the radar, right?
Right.
Like that person's not famous or recognizable or whatever, but that doesn't mean, because there's probably plenty of appreciation for that cat. Like you're saying, like guitar players, we seek out all these different players. And if you're in the circle, if you're like a session person, people know you. And so you're appreciated because people call you and pay you money to come play on their sessions.
Right.
And so, but I think the average public views it as like, well, I never heard that guy. And he's not in the same sphere as Neil Young or Jeff Beck or all these other guys or whatever. So he's underappreciated or whatever. But anyway, yeah. So it's cool because I think that the language we use about it can help guide conversations more in terms of not competition and not sports, but rather just appreciation. That's why I think this topic is really cool. And you alluded to speed too. And I think speed is such a fucking overrated thing in guitar. Like speed doesn't, who gives a fuck how fast you can play? Like there was a great, God, who said it? I'll find it, but it was a guitar player. Oh, it was Frank Zappa saying, yeah, I mean, because it was pragmatic about it. Because somebody asked him about it. He goes, hey, a person that can play 1,000 notes in a minute, you got to take your hat off to him. But, I'm paraphrasing and I can't remember, but basically what is he saying, like, and it's about, as you and I talk about, it's about how you fit this instrument into a song and make the song cool or make any kind of music cool, So speed, I think speed just gets focused on like, God, all the social media shit. There's all these people that can just play a mile a minute and it's like, if that's all you can do, cool. I guess that's your thing. But I really grew out of that a while ago.
That was really, really a bad thing in the 80s. I remember that. Like,
Yeah.
this is really the first time I'm thinking about the whole package, I guess, like the whole, like that you were talking about. Usually I've been thinking about just their guitar playing, what they play and the music they make and how they create the music. So I do agree with that, the whole package of like somebody who just lives and loves, music and that sort of, it's their essence. So yeah, now I'll probably come up with some more.
Well, again, it kind of psychs me up because it made me just start thinking, like I mentioned Zappa, I think he's a guitarist. And he's so weird, but he was a geek. He was into gear. He was into modding his gear. He was into playing guitar, but from his headspace, from his own, his own weird perspective. And so I think he appreciated other guitar players too in his way. Yeah. But like you're saying, for me, that's what I thought of too, is the whole package. It's the personality. It's how they approach the guitar. It's this whole thing, this aura around this person that makes them a guitarist's guitarist. But you're right. I mean, I think it means different things to different people. But I think whatever you can do in conversations to take out the competitive sports bullshit nature of that, because to me it's kind of a killjoy. It's like, because the opposite of that is people get pissed off when somebody's left off of a list of 100 greatest guitar players of all time. It's like, really? Do you really give a shit? If you dig their playing and shit, who cares if they're on some list created by some ding dong that just wants to get
It's the sports thing. It's the sports thing. Yeah. It like creeps into a lot of things and it has no place in art. It's like my team, you left my team off. My team is good. It's like, I mean, it's sports and there should be like a clear separation of sports and rock. I mean, sports is great, whatever, not my thing, but it's great. But rock and music and art aren't sports. They're different things. They're different, disciplines and different, so like, don't stick sports in art, I say.
No. And I think some of my favorite players throughout the years are people that just looked like they were genuinely having fun. Jerry Reed comes to mind. Like, that guy looked like he was having fun 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And he's one of the best fingerstyle pickers ever to play the guitar. And he played funky 70s Tellys and 70s Gibsons. And I love seeing him play with Chet Atkins because, they were like fire and ice. Like, he was this kind of crazy, silly joking hillbilly, and Atkins was this kind of staid, serious, he had a sense of humor, but he was really dry and kind of stoic, and it was such a cool contrast to see those guys play together because Jerry Reed was like, oh, yeehaw, shake it, Chester. And so he came to my mind too. Like, I recommend anybody go watch a bunch of old footage of Jerry Reed playing the guitar, and you'll be happy, because that's another thing. He brings that joy to his playing. You know what I mean? And that's another thing I think a guitarist does too, is they exude some, like Frizzell for me does that, and Jerry Reed does that. They exude other stuff through their playing that you pick up on. I think it's a cool conversation to have because, again, like I said, it makes you think about all the other things that come into play with a musician, their personality, how they think about their peers, how they fit into that kind of universe of musicians. And for you and me, I think we kind of became hip to session people and really appreciated them because of what they bring. That's another thing too, I think that I think a lot of players and people who know appreciate are all these session people who just have created all this music that we love and enjoy, that are under the radar, but they're appreciated. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of mine, when I was trying to think of like the ones that came to mind the quickest, was Reggie Young, who I learned about, even though I'd been listening to his music since I was a little kid. I actually learned about him from being in a John Prine tribute band, so I learned, and I actually liked his stuff so much. I sought him out in every interview I could find and all these videos, and I just loved him. And the same reason is such a memorable. I mean, the opening to what the fuck song is that? Son of a Preacher Man. The opening, the chime and that.
Oh, that's so
him.
good.
It's so simple, and it's like, why the fuck didn't I think of that?
I know.
Another one, Ed King. He's another one, and I didn't really
Oh
know about
man.
Ed King when I was a kid, and I was into Skinner. It was the shouty ones, like the
Yeah.
end of Freebird, the dude wailing. But now I start thinking something like "On the Hunt," that riff to "On the Hunt," and I'm pretty sure that's Ed King because it's very close to
Yeah.
working for MCA, and it has Ed King written all over it. But he had these really great phrases and this really great way of doing stuff, and the fact that he's the person who knew how to play the solo to "Sweet Home Alabama" in the right key.
Dude, yeah. Yeah.
So he was one, but yeah, Reggie Young was one that I just went on this huge kick of, and I can't play a lot like him, but there's other things that I found in his playing that I was really psyched about because it was stuff that I had been doing for a long time. Like he does these sliding sixths that I've used forever, kind of almost to a fault, but just seeing how he used them and like it was just really cool. So
That's
yeah, no,
awesome.
a lot of studio players. These are guitar players you don't even know that you're influenced by, but
Yeah.
they're there because you've heard them so much. That what is that? Louis Shelton's another one that was a good person that we've all heard and like don't
Yeah.
know and we've been influenced by. So yeah, I think definitely studio guitar players can be guitarists.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's cool because they are appreciated even by non-musicians. All the people who listen to that music love that music, and that guitar part is what makes that song so appealing to everybody who hears it. Like "Son of a Preacher Man," that intro it's so simple, but it's so beautiful. Like I forget who the guitar player was from Motown, but who did the intro to "My Girl," boom, 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 which is super simple, but it's cool, and that's an iconic. Right when you hear it, you know what song that is.
All right.
And
It's
so
super simple, but good luck trying to come up with something that cool.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that was like me for "On the Hunt." I'm like, that's so easy. Like that's so.
Why didn't I think of that?
Think about. I'm gonna make a song that has something like that. It's like no fucking way. It's like I can't. I mean,
I know.
yeah, where it comes from. It's like
Well, and I'm so in my head too. If I come up with something that simple and it sounds cool, I'm like, no, it can't be cool because it's too
it's,
simple. You know
it's
what I
too
mean? I
simple,
sabotage myself, right? Rather than just go with it and say, yeah, it's cool. So I
right.
appreciate people who can do that, who can come up with something simple and just go with it and say, yeah, I like
Trust
it.
themselves.
Yeah, trust themselves. Yeah. And I think the family of musicians that we talk about is that's what I thought about when we talked about this concept of guitarist is just I thought about the wider family of musicians and producers even and everybody in the mix that works with people or has heard people or wants to get somebody on a session. Yeah, and lots of people pop into our heads now that we have this discussion, which is kind of cool. So hopefully people listening will think about it themselves and think about guitarists they like or musicians they like, for instance.
Yeah, one thing that occurred to me when I was thinking about this, because I'm no spring chicken, it's like, years and years ago, I'd aspire to be somebody that was like really fast, good, technically adept guitar player. Now it's like, shit, I'd love it if I was ever thought of as a guitarist by the time I died.
Oh,
So it gives you
totally.
like something to shoot for, like maybe coming up with something that's brilliantly simple, or just having that essence where you're just, you just have such a love of the guitar that people pick up on it and shit like
Yeah.
that. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but something like
No,
that.
I totally know what you're trying to say, and that's why another reason I appreciate all these guitar players that maybe are under the radar is they make you think in different ways and inspire you. Because that's what's happened to me over the course of my career playing guitar too, is exactly going on that journey from, when you're a young kid liking the shiny objects and the fast shit and then really coming to appreciate just the soulful, simple approach to some music that just kills you. It just, that's the perfect part for that song. That's so cool.
Yeah, and being well-rounded because you can still appreciate. You can watch Jeff Beck do his
man.
like
Yeah.
person from outer space playing guitar and your jaw hitting the floor, and it's like I like that. But I do like Son of a Preacher Man sliding six harmonic things like that. Super simple and super complicated. So that's what's so great about guitar. There's
Yeah.
there's no one or either or with
Yeah.
like being technical or being simple and brilliant.
And yeah, and I guess another trait that I really appreciate about guitarists is some guitar players' openness to keep learning a guitar and stuff. Like Alex Lifeson comes to mind. Right? I remember when I was a kid and I was oh, he's taking classical guitar lessons. Oh, that's so cool. And he incorporated that into some Rush songs and stuff. But and just reading about different guitar players that they're big time musicians and they have bands that are big and they recording all this stuff, but they keep trying to get better at their craft, you know,
Right.
and trying to learn. And so that's another trait I really appreciate about certain people.
It's kind of hard not to. It's a journey, but you know, then you go back to someone like Neil Young, and I don't really. He seems like he's just like a really like talented like guitar. Like he's like a singer songwriter guitar player. You know, it's like he just does the guitar. He appreciates it. He loves it, but it's like he doesn't obsess over it. But he has this thing, and he does have this relationship with it. You know, and I really really love his voice, and his guitar is kind of like his voice. It's just like this old. It just reminds me of like an old Martin or something. It's just this creaky thing, has such a presence, and the way that he can combine them is something that I've always really liked. I don't know where I was going with that, with coming from what you were talking about, but anyway, I digress.
Well, I kind of made the connection again between those traits in Neil Young are kind of what draws me to him as a guitar player, and I consider that a guitar player, where he's idiosyncratic. He approaches the instrument his own way with his own personality and his own inflection and everything. Again, like, I mean, it ties into what we talk about appreciation and kind of the metrics people have in their heads about what is a good singer or what is a good guitar player. And hopefully as people get older, they start to open their minds up to say, because I sure did. I mean, I was that kind of thought. I thought that way when I was younger, like, oh my God, that person's got a shitty voice, or oh my God, but then once you realize, no, they're singing in their voice, and that's the honesty that they bring to that, and the personality that they bring to that is so cool, and that's what you want. You want to be a person where you hear that person instantly, and in a second, you know who it is. Mm-hmm. You know that's Bob Dylan. You know it's Neil Young. You know it's Joni Mitchell. You know it's anybody. You know. And that's what people want. And so I really appreciate that about artists, their own approach to their instrument or their vocals. And it makes me happy. All right. Well, I really dug that conversation, man. I mean, maybe it'll resurface in the future, but that was fun. And I hope you guys out there get something from this, and think about it in terms of, I mean, that's another thing. Just think about it in terms of who are your favorite players and who you consider to be guitarists or any other musicians. It's kind of a fun exercise. But anyway, as always, thanks for listening. We really appreciate it. We're on the Ruinous Media Network, which we're really psyched to be a part of. We have DistroKid as a sponsor, which we're also psyched about. Go to our website, chrisandrick.guitars.com. Check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Chris, what do you got?
As always, play guitar.